with Jenna.
Yeah, hey, so thanks for coming to the meetup. Yeah, so let's talk about render performance in the age of AI. I give it the subtitle, A Lesson in Controlling Entropy, because I like to make the joke that performance engineering is like controlling entropy, and I feel like especially since AI has become so much part of the development lifecycle that it's never been more true. So a little bit about me, more about me. So I am I was a senior staff performance person at both Notion and Slack. I currently work nowhere, hence the call for jobs, please hire me. Most recently I was at Notion on the web infra team where I was trying to make the app fast. When I got there, the primary metric was how fast does the thing load? And I was like, wait, don't we care about how fast the thing is once you already have it on the page? So I was working for about the past 2 years on the interaction latency of Notion. And it was kind of a very similar story before that at Slack. There was no one working on performance full-time. So I said, why not me? And was a founding member of the client performance infrastructure team there. I also, as you have heard, am a speaker manager for this meetup. So one more pitch to please speak at this meetup. We want to hear from you. You can also find me on the internet at Zeigen Vector on Blue Sky and LinkedIn, and maybe some other places. And these slides are currently up at that link, though they're not the most current version. They'll probably, by the time the internet sees this, they will be. Okay, so I'm here to talk about how AI tools changed how we kept, we'll call the app annotation, since I don't work there anymore and I don't want to get in trouble, how we kept that app's render performance and interaction latency in check. So this is specifically not how did I use AI tools to make the thing better. I think we're just in a different era now. AI tools have kind of changed both our approach and also the nature of the work and the challenges that we face. So I'm going to try and talk about all of those today. Before I get into any performance talk, I do like to talk about why we, quote unquote, do performance. It's fun to make the joke that we do performance to make the graphs go in the right direction. It is great when down is better and the graph goes down, or that dopamine hit of when the thing that used to take 600 milliseconds now takes 60 milliseconds. But that's not ultimately why we are doing performance. Maybe we are doing it a little bit for money. Ultimately, we, after all, do work in capitalism, so everything is ultimately about money. And we were probably not doing it so people don't write bad things about us on Hacker News. I do like to say that performance is, we like to think about performance to ensure that our users have a not bad experience, just an acceptable experience. Performance, once the users notice that the app is slow, that is when you're cooked. When you just get out of their way and they don't even notice, they're not even thinking about, is the thing fast, is the thing slow, then that is really all you can ask for. All right, so let's start to talk about how does AI change the performance landscape. So as we know, AI has changed a lot of things, but performance in particular, it's important to realize that AI amplifies patterns, both good and bad. And these are patterns both from within your code base, so the patterns that, that are in there, the way that the semantics, the idioms that you all use within your code, and also code on the internet that you have absolutely no control over, and it's just code from all over the internet. You have no idea how good or bad it is. Also, with all of that, as you all know, I feel like I'm preaching to the choir here, we are a lot more productive now, and that is both good, especially for organizations. They want us to go faster, faster, faster. That also means it's more opportunities for mistakes. And we're doing more work, and more work generally means worse performance. A lot of times, performance problems are just you're doing extra work that you don't have to. So there's this, the conflict there is even tighter than it used to be. And right, this is a talk about render performance. We're not even talking about the performance issues arising from shipping all of that new code. Right, when I rolled up to Meet for Speed and was like, can you tell me why annotation maybe has some loading performance issues, and our principal performance engineers were like, I'm gonna need a little bit more time to help you with this. Like, we're not even talking about that type. We're talking about the interaction latency, the render, the reactivity of this application. Also, it should be noted that AI also has lowered the barrier to entry for contributing to the code base. And that means that people don't always completely understand the implications of the changes that they are making. And so, yeah, that product manager is really excited about shipping that button, but maybe they don't quite understand the system that button is built on top of. So while I contend that performance should not be the arcane discipline that it's made out to be, it is still a technical thing we have to think about. Time and space complexity, underlying systems, they all require some amount of technical understanding. Can this be gained by everyone if they put in enough time, especially with the help of AIs? Sure, but that's usually, again, not the goal of that PM adding that shiny new feature that they've been dreaming of, and they finally have the tools to build themselves. Also, one more thing, this doesn't even get a bullet. It's a headline slide. Performance is about trade-offs, but I found that AI cannot be taught taste, and it depends effectively. Folks say that part of being a staff engineer is, or a senior engineer is like, contending with that it depends. I feel like a lot of times when I'm giving performance advice, there is sometimes this it depends, this level of nuance that is within the answer that I give that I feel like, or at least to date in my experience, I've not been able to teach an AI how to have that taste. That is important to note. But again, we are still trying to improve the performance of applications, and there's some things that AI has not changed. Performance problems ultimately come down to the computer doing more work than it has to. Again, it might be doing more work, but still the same underlying problems. And this is often the result of systemic issues. At least this is what I found in my experience making these really complex React applications like Slack and annotation faster. And to solve this, you often have to understand the system. You can be you, the engineer, it can be you, the organization, or you is the AI that is writing that code alongside you. And again, you still need to understand what is currently slow. And that brings me to the first step, which still hasn't changed, which is that you should measure the performance of the application before you try to optimize. Figure out what exactly you need to measure, what exactly you care about, what exactly you need to focus on. So which metrics make the most sense for your application? Depending on what you're working on, Core Web Vitals could still be it. You could maybe not have a very super interactive application, and LCP and CLS could be it for you, and IMP is not a huge deal. For apps that I work on, IMP became a huge deal because that was where the vast majority of the interaction with the application was clicking and typing, and it ended up being a good metric for us that I'll get into in a little bit. There's also this question that is AI being integrated into your app, changing the way your users will be interacting with the product, and therefore the ways it could be slow. So, taking a step back, this is not necessarily it's something I had to contend with, but felt like a good question to ask, which is, as we weave AI more into our applications, are we typing less? Is the computer writing more for us? Is it more about receiving API calls or receiving streaming from your AI provider, etc.? Or is it still clicking on things? Is it still typing everything that you're typing? And yeah, so maybe your metrics are going to need to evolve as your application evolves, but still, regardless, you still need metrics. So I did talk about IMP as something that I found to be really important in annotations application, but I also realized that the one that was out of the box from Core Web Vitals didn't quite fit. So I realized that it was something that we maybe needed to separate. Clicking had a very different profile from typing, considering how much typing is still happening within that app. It also kind of changed the shape of the metric a little bit. This is just an example of still devising metrics that fit the needs of your application. And then we found out that maybe our version of IMP was not as good as we wanted it to be. So that leads us to some of the more exciting parts of performance, like making it better. 2 years ago, it wasn't exactly on this stage because it was at Fastly, but I gave a talk here about, it was several components or rendering, about how I improved performance at Slack, and I split the approach into two general approaches, I guess. One was targeting problem components, and the second was broad spectrum solutions. I will talk a little bit more about those two today, and also include diagnosing regressions, because I think AI can help us in all three of these domains. So first one is broad spectrum solutions. You might wonder, what do I mean by that? Once we realized that we needed to improve interaction latency of the application, the first thing that you probably do is crack open that DevTools and push the record button and then start to do the thing that you would think is slow, like, say, switching pages within your application, especially if it's a single page application. There might be a lot of stuff that's happening that you can record. So this is what we did. This is actually from Slack, because I didn't have a screenshot of annotation, but it still looks the same. We saw these weird paper cuts. And so usually when you profile an application, you find the worst offending function, you make that faster, you rinse repeat until your app is faster. And with AI in hand, if you say oh, I see this very particular thing is slow, it's sticking out like a sore thumb, you can say, hey, AI, I would like to figure out why this particular component or this particular thing is slow, and it's really targeted at that. But in this case, it was just a whole bunch of everything. So we need to take a step back and figure out what is everything? How is the system working that it's just doing a whole bunch of pretty much nothing? I guess I was starting to ask these questions before AI really came onto the scene, because this was a big part of what I was doing at Slack too. But I think that if I were to do it again, these questions would still stand. How do the frameworks or system that your app is built on work? React is pretty well documented, but maybe your application has a homegrown, say, management system that you need to start to pick apart. Can the AI help you to better understand that system? Maybe. Can you help the AI better understand it? If you go and read the code, you kind of give it some documentation about, hey, this is how we know this thing works. Talk to the people who built it if it's homegrown, and work together with your robots to help you understand the code base and help the robots help you understand it in turn. Again, I'll say it explicitly, documentation can be read by all. So this is a toy representation of app annotation. So you have these top-level stores and also derived stores called computed stores. So, I mean, this is just, I could go through it a little bit about how the system works, because I think it helps to understand what we were dealing with here and why it was a little bit hard to figure out why, well, you know, figured out why it was slow, but there's some gnarly things in there about fixing it. So yeah, you had top-level stores and then derived stores called computed stores. Like in many state management systems, you access the data in these stores via hooks. In this case, it was hooks called use store state or use computed store. And then when the store changes, which can happen as a result of a change transmitted via WebSocket or API call, or because of an interaction with the application, the components that are listening to that store and also the computed stores that listen to that state will be notified in like a cascading change situation, which causes those hooks to rerun. And then if the value of the hook has changed, then the component will re-render. Remember, this change can be real, the data could actually be different, or it could be the result of instability, returning an array that contains the same data, for example, but is not, triple equals. So JavaScript says it's different. So regardless, it's a re-render. And this is one way that unnecessary re-renders happen. So this was a situation that we were dealing with. And I will say that it was a very similar situation at Slack too, where there was just state management system inefficiencies that caused unnecessary re-renders, unnecessary hooks that were running. Still, we broke down the application, trying to figure out what are these anti-patterns that are happening throughout the app that are making the app slow. So again, unnecessary hook runs, unnecessary re-renders, and unnecessary expensive hook wrappers too, like use memo that doesn't need to be a use memo, these types of protective things that people add because they think they're doing the right thing or they think they need to do it, but maybe it's just adding extra bulk, extra work. Once we had this list of anti-patterns, it seemed so AI skills were all the rage at that point. So we were like, oh, well, I have this document that explains all of these things, and an AI skill is just a document. So why don't I translate the anti-patterns into a skill that can be run by engineers seeking to optimize their code? So we also tried to include concrete examples of the good and the bad, this code is good, this code is bad, this is how you can fix the thing. And turns out it was kind of disappointing. Again, you can't teach an AI taste, you can't teach it, it depends, without a lot of work. Actually, I don't know about Fable, but you can't use that anyway. So, I think I think we were still using the 4 models at this point, and it was still disappointing. Though, depending on the complexity of your code base, maybe you can figure out how to use this in CI as a code review bot type of situation, and maybe you could catch some things. Never really got around to trying that while I was there, but maybe that's something that could be done. But if you don't want to write your own thing, there's so many documented anti-patterns that happen in React all the time, so you might be interested in these out-of-the-box tools that I have not used and cannot speak to, but I felt like I had to put them on a slide because people like concrete examples of things to do. So the thing that I felt like I had the most purchase with was creating custom lint rules based on those anti-patterns. Pre-AI, when I was at Slack, I knew that lint rules were probably the most powerful thing for getting people to write code performantly, but writing lint rules was hard. It's not the JavaScript that I was writing every day. The ASTs are hard to parse. It took a while, and I felt like I was limited by the complexity of the thing that I was trying to write. I think that again, the most surefire way to get an AI to follow instructions is not a skill, it is hitting it over the head with a lint failure. So if you can figure out how to codify these anti-patterns and the fixes into something that the AI cannot ignore, the AI understands because it's a lint failure, then that is the best way of cleaning up all the anti-patterns throughout the application. So the team was able to prompt Claude to write lint rules based on the anti-patterns. So a prompt like this, this is kind of a toy prompt. It did take a lot of iteration and going back and forth. This was not like a one-shot situation, I will admit that. But it did feel like we were going towards something that was eventually going to work versus this wheel spinning, hey, AI, can you fix this thing for me? Or like, can you check the code to make sure that this thing is not happening? Using the AI to fix a lint failure also had a lot higher return on cycle than the generic, like tossing a skill at it, I will say. So yeah, we were able to come up with lint rules for these types of anti-patterns and more. It's been like a month since I thought about this, but this was what I could remember. So things like, is this hook stable? Because that's that instability that happened. If your use selector or use computed store is going to return an unstable value, that's going to cause the component to re-render, and that's unnecessary, it's extra work. Does this thing need to be wrapped in this hook? Like use memo, if the thing is already returning a stable value and the computation is not complex, does not need to use memo, but like, thank you for trying to do something performantly. I'll give you that. Is all of this prop used in the component? Passing in an object, but you only use one value off of it. That is, I'm gonna say probably extra work to maybe assemble that prop in the parent component. Is this prop stable? That will also, I feel like that's like the most basic thing about React. You pass it a prop that is different, it will re-render, not just for the hook. Is this hook duplicated within the component? You'd be surprised. Sometimes the same value is derived more than once in a component, especially as the components get more and more complex. Things happen. And then should this component be hoisted to the parent? If you have a list of items and they're all computing the same value and there's no difference between all of the computations and all of the components, that can be hoisted so that you only do the computation once in a parent and you pass them all down to all the child components. And then are we only using a subsection of return value from hook? Like it's kind of similar to one of the past ones. Again, you're doing extra work only to, drop most of it on the floor. So just some examples of things that you can, I'm not going to say easily write a lint rule for, but it made it possible to write these guardrails. And again, lint rules are good because they, prevent more of these anti-patterns from happening within the code base. They're also diagnostic. They help you find existing problems within the code base, which then you can it's a lot easier now to have an AI go back through and fix all the existing lint violations. Though there are ways of having existing lint violations in your code base and making them warnings and stuff so that they can just live on forever and you never fix it. I would not necessarily recommend that if you have not already put yourself in a mess where that is necessary. Okay, also targeting problem components. So sometimes there is that one thing in the profile that is going wrong. You know that, say, the sidebar is a problem child and you want to target fixing it. Or you know that maybe opening the AI chat button pop-up is kind of slow. So I got really excited about Chrome DevTools MCP for this purpose, and then I got disappointed. But maybe there's a use case, if you can, just prompt the MCP to do the interaction that you think might be slow and profile it. That could work for you, depending on how complex that is and how well you can prompt. Maybe it was a skill issue for me and you're better at prompting than me, but I kind of found that this was disappointing because I have human fingers that can navigate to a page and click a button, and I also can click the profiler myself and then ask AI to find patterns within that profile instead of having it try and click buttons for me. So I found that this was actually the thing that was helpful. So get the profile, download it, and then feed that giant pile of JSON, because that is all it is, to Claude, and then it is actually, I think it probably has enough precedent of of digesting the actually, I think it had to write Python. I think it tried to write Python to digest the profile every single time. So maybe that's a skill that you can write that would actually be useful. If you don't want to spend your tokens writing a on-the-fly Python profile digester. But anyway, it did feel a lot better to go back and forth with Claude when it just had that raw JSON that it could look at. But I will also contend that flame graphs and that format was devised to make pretty pictures for your human eyes to look at. So maybe you could also find things by looking at the profile. You know when that span is wider than the rest of the spans. You don't really need to pay Anthropic to tell you that. But sometimes it can find things that you couldn't find, especially in that paper cuts case where the aggregation and kind of having a view that could digest all of that data can help. But I digress. This will also work for the React DevTools profiler. That is also JSON that you can download. So once it comes back with this particular thing was slow, you can ask it to help you find optimization opportunities. AI is actually pretty okay at optimizing something that it has already deemed as slow, or that you have already deemed as slow. It might find some big O notation wins in your functions and in your components. So I would actually recommend that. And then also, I don't know if I actually tried this. Maybe I actually did. I don't remember anymore. But I think keep snapshots are also just a giant pile of data. So maybe the AIs would be good at figuring out what is taking up so much space. So give that a try too. Okay, and then last thing that I've found AI to be helpful with is diagnosing regressions within the metrics. So let's say you were doing a really good job fixing your IMP metric, and then all of a sudden it spikes. You were fixing all the systemic issues, using your lint rules, burning down all these anti-patterns, and then all of a sudden, bam, you check your graph and it's gone up. This is actually a spot where I used AI really heavily to try and figure out what happened with that spike. It was less good at the creeps, though, I will admit. So one thing that we could try was saying, hey, Claude, we saw a regression in this particular IMP. sub-metric around this date? Can you go through the PRs around that time and see if anything could have caused the regression? And sometimes it worked, especially when there was a very particular thing that was that stood out. I mean, sometimes it was like, here are 4 potential issues or potential PRs out of 350 changes in this particular change set, which was actually really helpful for narrowing down. And then I think in this particular case with this spike, the first one, AI was actually pretty instrumental in finding what had gone wrong. And then we were able to revert it, and that was, well, not revert it, fix it eventually, safely. What else? I also found that using AI tools for analyzing the giant piles of data that we got from our metrics was actually kind of useful. I used the tool Hex, and it had a semi-useful like AI that you could chat with, and it would write SQL for me and kind of give me introspection into the data that I would have needed a lot more expertise in SQL to do at that point by myself. So it was good at answering questions like, can you make me a graph of this metric by release version? Which is actually, if you actually spend an hour to learn how to write the SQL, it's not actually that hard. Or, hey, can you tell me if the IMP regression was more prominent for certain cohorts, or if it was more statistically significant than than other cohorts, and split by, let's maybe try this for plan type. Is it a free plan? Is it enterprise? What browser are they on? Is it Windows or Linux or something that's really driving this? Was it, folks using the browser or folks using the desktop app? Stuff like that. It made it a lot easier to slice and dice the data and have confidence, because you could ask it questions like, is this statistically significant? Are you sure? Sometimes it was not sure once poked. Just there's tooling out there that is actually making this kind of, I have a giant pile of data, how do I make it easier to, how do I start to slice and dice this, kind of have that a conversation with an entity that can help you sort through all of that. I do not work for Hex. They said that they did not need a performance engineer, so I'm saying this freely. Okay, so through all of that ranting, I'll just clarify this into some lessons that I have learned and kind of just want to distill out here. Tried and true engineering best practices still remain the best practices. AI skills they got a lot of hype. People asked me to do that. They're like, when is the front-end performance AI skill happening? And it ended up being disappointing. Again, maybe a skill issue, but I do think that lint rules and other guardrails that we've been using for years and decades, putting things in CI, just stopping the bot in its tracks is still the best way to prevent us from writing unperformant code and allow our users to have the best user experience and not create an app that will get in their way. Also, AI is still not good at a lot of things. Pause intended. Think about all the stuff that was easy for you, but harder for computers, like navigating to web pages successfully, or clicking on buttons, or finding that long span in a flame graph, and consider if that's something that you really need AI to help you with. Or are your human capabilities going to help get you there faster? Is there tooling that exists, tooling that has been built that is actually better for the job than relying on AI? And so that lastly, AI tools should supplement you, not replace you. Flip side, think about the stuff that was genuinely hard for you to do, like pouring through heaps of data, or finding patterns in profiles, or writing lint rules, and use the AI as a partner. And remember, ultimately, you are still writing the code. You are still responsible for the code. AI is just adding to the entropy, and we can still control it. All right. Thanks, everyone.
You mentioned things that people are better at than computers. Like in Need for Speed sessions, we often look at the film strip to understand what is the moment. Like basically, metrics are not perfect, right? Like to know when did things happen. Let's say in loading a page. Like I'm not talking about JavaScript execution. Do you think we can use AI to help us there, or like we still need to guide it of like, hey, this is actually where the moment that we care about?
I mean, I never want to say that you can't use AI, but I do still feel like film strip is pictures. Is AI good at pictures? Maybe we can make it good at pictures. Maybe there's a way to do it, but like I feel like there's this like push to replace things that we're already good at with something that is less good at the thing. And maybe that's because the tooling that we've built was for humans. We're trying to push AI to do something and understand, in quotation marks, tooling that was built for us to understand all of this data in a way that like we've already figured out those tools, create those tools. Maybe, I'm not gonna say no. I'm not gonna say no, like AI isn't good at that also, because like I've never tried it, but yeah, keep looking for that breakpoint with your human eyes. That's my answer.
Okay, and then.
So when you said Claude or any AI is getting good at writing code, and you need to but you need to define lint rules and put it in CI so that it passes through all the checks and make sure the code is good enough. What do you think of third-party services that review PRs before the senior does? So example, as you're the senior dev, if I write some bad code, there's a service that specifically I know is called GrabTile, and it knows all your code base and some others, like a bunch of others, and I've seen it perform way better than Claude does. So they like get into the files and very nitpicky on like security stuff. For example, if I'm doing like rate limiting on an IP, based on IP, it would say that, oh, you should do per user. This might be not good for security for your performance. What do you think of services like that and combining it with Claude to basically, eliminate the need of senior looking through the code?
I don't think we should ever eliminate a human looking at the code.
Like, for example, like just making it faster for you. Of course, you have to do it, but have you ever used such AI, like different ones?
We used Graphite.
Graphite, yeah.
But it's like, it's not going to find everything.
Right.
And I think that like, if you can, we're not putting the lint rules in, that's only in CI, right? If you can integrate that into your cursor, since we're talking about Graphite here, that feedback loop is a lot faster. I find like the most annoying thing is like you need to like push the code up and then you get the feedback, and it's like 15 minutes later once the thing has digested it.
Right.
Like if you can stop the person, then tell them you've made this tiny little mistake, it's really easy to fix, that feedback loop becomes a lot less frustrating.
Right.
I think also like in these particular cases, these were anti-patterns that at least some of them were pretty specific to our code base. So, your AI code reviewer might not be as well versed in that.
Right.
And
Makes
also
sense.
like if it's statically analyzable, I don't need to pay an AI to find that for me.
So my question is actually regarding that part where you said that you were investigating the cohorts, trying to figure out the specific like device, operation system, and other things where that could be a potential issue. So my question is regarding the metrics. So I assume those metrics were P75, right? Like the usual way how the core web vitals are measured. So based on how it measures things, like by default, so in core web vitals P75, it kind of cuts that 25% of the performance, which could be crucial. So I witnessed myself situations where there was the P75 in completely green area and INP, which could be a very relevant metric for Notion. But let's say there were 20% of mobile Safari users who are in that 25%, but just based on how the math works, they're actually in such a red category that it's barely usable. So the question is whether you actually found any specific cohorts there, if you can share this, of course.
Yeah, so you know how I mentioned that I kind of wrote our own IMP. It was like, I mean, it wasn't for this reason, but we weren't using the like import INP from Core Web Vitals. I was sending the like event timing for every single click, for every single typing event for 1% of our users. So we're able to kind of slice and dice that a little bit more versus sending just that like updated IMP number. I think that made finding that easier. And we actually were not using the 75% either as the IMP. We were what percentage of users were experiencing one over 500 millisecond interaction event during that day. So it was even like tighter. But again, the out of the box one could work for you. I just didn't think it was going to work for us.
Yes, thank you.
Maybe I should have explained our IMP a little bit more, but yeah. My take in general is more data that you can slice and dice is better without, having your data warehouse bill be exorbitantly expensive.
Great talk. You mentioned there is lints, like linting helps a lot. Are these general purpose lints that we can consume as React developers, or is this something that is very specific to the project you were working on?
I think I haven't looked at React Doctor super deeply, but I think that is actually, I think the basis of that, it does integrate with like Oxlint. I think that might be the out of the box thing that you could be looking for. I don't know exactly what's in there though.
Okay. Thank you for the talk. I was just curious about like the nature of the regression for the big spike that you had. Like, was it because of React or anything like that? Or the product manager added the button?
It was not a vibe coding situation. It was a single PR. And it was, what was it? There was something was async and then it became not async anymore. And it just like shifted the situation into the big, shifted more code into the already larger frame. And I think it was the switching pages frame too. So it was a bit of a mess. I will say it was in Claude's shortlist, even though I may have ignored it for a little too long. I was looking for an easier thing, but I've caught its flowers there.
I actually have a question. So you mentioned like using the AI to write SQL, for example, right?
Yeah.
But also, I want to kind of generalize it to, we are not good at everything, right? Like as people, right? Like we are good, we specialize in some things, but this particular field is very wide. You need to know like TCP/IP stack, browser rendering stack, everything in between, and God knows what else. Did you find it useful to use AI to educate yourself? Like in this case, to write SQL for you, or just educate yourself to write something better, or how the hell is a particular header in HTTP works?
I will say I have learned things from AI, but I also feel like it has given me the opportunity to not learn things that I should have learned, like how to write SQL better. I don't have to think about that anymore. Also, like writing a lint rule. I feel like that was something that I actually kind of enjoyed a little bit trying to figure out and work through in, what was the ASTExplorer.net. And then it's just like, well, I have to go fast. This thing is faster than me, so we'll just do that. And then I think it's disincentivized to really dig in and look at the thing, especially if it's not going to go to production. So unfortunately, I think there are pros and cons to having a thing that will fill those gaps, especially because it means that like your personal gap, like the gap in your knowledge might not ever be filled. You might not like learn from the thing if you aren't incentivized to actually, crack it open and read what it did.
I just want to say that's why we need speed reading club. We need that. We need that talk.
Yeah, you all need to come and bring the good article to read. Not by AI, but by yourself.
Hey, again, thank you for the talk. I actually have, I thought of a question when we've mentioned jokingly that like the manager has implemented a button and the kind of issues that arise from that. I actually am interested to know like how has this addition or prevalence of AI kind of changed the dynamic between, say, like you and like engineers like us and like either the managers or other higher positions, kind of like, is it a situation where now a lot of your job is cleaning up or fixing what the kind of managers or marketing team has done? Or are the expectations different from them now? Like, how has that changed, I guess, overall, I would say?
So what I'm hearing you ask is, like, how have the expectations of the performance engineer changed, and how also have the expectations on folks who were previously not writing code changed?
I guess you could say.
I would say that, like, the expectations of the performance engineer have not changed in so much as you have to make the performance of the application better no matter what. And like, it doesn't matter where the code came from, doesn't matter who wrote it, doesn't matter if there was more, like, you still got to keep the user's experience acceptable/good. And I think that like one of the benefits of creating guardrails that prevent bad code from going in is it prevents, or I'll say like suboptimal code from going in, is that like it doesn't matter who wrote the code, and it's less reactive. It's not like, oh, our metrics told us the button was bad, and we know like we had to catch it in the diagnosing regressions phase. You can kind of get that a little bit earlier. Yeah. If you could also put, I forgot to mention this because we didn't do it, but like if you have like performance catastrophe detection in CI, that could also help with not having to diagnose the regression, catching it before it goes in. And if you could figure out something that is, sensitive enough for not just catastrophes, that is also better. I think that also goes under the header of things that we used to do that were best practices, and it hasn't really changed in AI, but will help us save our bacon maybe more often than it used to.
So you basically catch stuff quicker, kind of, instead of having to wait for stuff to break on the site, you're having to go back and fix it, basically. Okay.
But I would say, regardless of AI, it's probably better than
nice.
chasing.
Yeah, perfect. And maybe just a bit of a kind of follow-up or sort of elaboration, I guess. How would you say this? Has the dynamic with like your, I don't know what the right word here is, but like with your management or whoever else changed a whole lot? Like, are they less patient with you, or is it just like same amount of work, just different kind of flow of it? in your opinion? Or from your experience, what would you say?
I mean, I would say that there is some expectation that AI should be making your job easier, like do more faster. It doesn't matter who you are, even if you're. I mean, I might be a little bit salty about this for reasons, but yeah, AI tools are improving, or improving velocity for product engineers. Why isn't it improving velocity for infrastructure engineers too, including performance engineers? Like, why can't you make the tooling that you need faster now that you have a thing that can do that for you? Or why can't you diagnose the regressions faster now that you have a thing that's aiding you in doing that? Yeah, I mean, there might be other managers that are a bit more lenient, that understand the whole system, but my experience is not that it made a difference.
You were talking about like the linting, and I just kind of want to ask, in the context of like tools in terms of like editing, is that obviously like there's a lot. I don't even know how to frame this question. It's like where do you see this going? Like, do you think toolkits will move more towards like more advanced LSPs and things like that, or is it just going to be like more AI?
I say this is a little bit out of my realm of expertise.
Hello. On the topic of like the skills or like prompts and things to kind of point or hit the AI on the head to do the right thing. Did you, personally, I've been very surprised at how small tweaks in language can have a really big effect on like how well an AI does a task. Did you have any experience like that while doing this performance-oriented work? And were there things that you found to be particularly effective?
I'm trying to recall if there were things that happened that I think, yeah, there was. I think my answer is that like maybe I didn't know those. Maybe that's why I didn't have a good experience with writing skills. And maybe the thing wasn't like, maybe I was not specific enough. I thought that the AI could infer anything from what I was asking, because I'm used to talking to humans, not to a robot. I'm wondering if there's anything in particular that you've seen that you're trying to get at.
Well, maybe it's that it all feels so anecdotal. It's hard to know. Like, when working with computers as a performance engineer, I do something, I expect the same result. And this, it's a little bit more wishy-washy. It's all in the gray areas. And so I've been struggling to try and figure this out. And I was curious if you've experienced any guidance there. It seems like it's just a hard problem.
Yeah. I mean, I only have like generic advice about like talking to the LLM, not necessarily in performance land. There's a reason why I was like, "Hi, Claude, thank you," and all of them, because like I've heard that like maybe you should be nice to your agent and then it will perform better.
I heard otherwise.
Really, you think you should be?
I
You
heard
should.
the opposite actually as well, that you have to be hard on it and then it will fall. That's what a lot of how to put it, a lot of reinforcement learning thought. Those are rumors, I believe. All either side.
So be nice and mean, yes.
You gotta tell it to not make mistakes.
Have like good cop, bad cop,
I feel like maybe the one thing that I did was asking it like, "Can you check your work?"
Yeah.
Was awesome. Like, are you sure? Especially
double checking
when
is surprisingly good.
When talking to Hexbot, especially because it was like it's really hard to validate that output, because like wrote me some SQL, it hides it, and then it's like, here's some pros about what I found, and I'm like, can you like go back and like check to make sure? And then like more often than I would like, it'd be like JK lol.
Yep.
And maybe before I asked, I like went like into Slack and was like, "Hey, I think I found something," and then I had to be like, "Also JK lol." So yeah, I feel like performance is still so hard, and there's just been this like, there's so much hype and hope around AI that it will help answer all these problems and be good at analysis, and I think still it's much better at creation than. Maybe I should put this in the talk. It's like better at producing things more than analysis. I was trying to figure out something around Bloom's taxonomy around this. It didn't quite fit. But like, yeah, I think like there's also, I think like, you know, writing lint rules was a lot easier than like, hey, can you figure out why the app is slow?
I actually have another question. You mentioned Chrome DevTools MCP.
Yeah.
By the way, I think they renamed it to Chrome DevTools for Agents because they say it's not just MCP server, but that's details.
Cool.
Good to know. Marketing is awesome. But did you have a chance to check out the new thing they released at Google I/O, which is modern web guidance skill? I think it's a kind of like, it's not just skills, but it's like a combination of guidebooks that Google team wrote on all of the features in the browsers and how, like, effectively, instead of reinventing things in JavaScript, like the agent helps you use the native web platform features instead. Like use native dialogue instead of reinventing the dialogue with mechanics in JavaScript, which a lot of us didn't really.
Yeah.
Stuff like that. Have you had a chance to check it out, and if you have any feedback on
I have not, but it sounds great for both performance and accessibility. And bundle size, maybe also, but just performance. Yeah, great. Good to know.
Are you saying we should invite somebody to speak about it, maybe?
I don't know, do you know anyone?
Only the guy who worked on it.
Actually, I guess this is a bit of a comment that we meant about how we mentioned whether you should be mean or nice to your agent. I found in my experience, I actually found an interesting thing. So being nice or being polite is all well and good because it, again, helps reinforce that in their interaction with us. However, it's not so much that you have to be mean to your agent. What I found is actually it helps to be declarative, or basically give it orders rather than be mean. The reason being, and the thing is, funnily enough, the agent itself actually recommended that I do this. The reason being is because unless you are like very specific that you want something, like you say like do this or do that, like very specifically, it has a tendency to start to fall back on its like default behaviors that are programmed into it, which results in it giving you kind of like the standard practices, which may or may not be good, as you mentioned in your talk. So it kind of tends to fall back on that a lot. So rather, like if you want to kind of make sure you're getting the right results, or you want it to like not hallucinate or not forget what you asked it to do, you need to phrase it more as kind of like a command. So it's not that you need to be mean, you just need to be kind of like specific and order it to do stuff regarding that. Another thing I found that helps is to, when asking it to solve something or look through something or give like an answer to something, I find that it helps to ask it for options rather than to simply do one thing, and to make sure to tell it to give you the answer first and not act until you've kind of approved it, because it has a tendency to kind of like tug on the leash a bit and try to jump into like fixing something even though you haven't told it yet. And usually when you're trying to be polite, you say, could you do this? And it immediately assumes, I must now go and do this. I'm not even going to ask you or prompt you to see if you want me to apply this fix or not, which can be very disastrous if you're not careful. But yeah, that's what I found in my experience. Would you agree with these? Are these kind of helpful bits of advice? Have you ran into anything like this?
That's a question. I mean, I was just say good to know.
Yeah, one of the tips, one of the regression problems, one of the tips I found is to tell the agent to always address you by your name. And if the PR gets long enough and it forgets about the context, the small things like that, if it forgets to tell you by your name, you should stop that agent and start fresh. That's an easy fix for regression.
It's a good way to detect the out of
Yeah.
also context, right?
Yeah.
Context. Actually, Alex reminded me like best practices versus standard practices, right? Agent learned standard practices or common practices, right?
Yeah.
But you said you were talking about best practices. Did you find any gaps between like any like detectable gaps between what it will go do without your insight versus what you actually need to be very particular about?
Yeah. I think the big one where it would like go off the rails was we had a particular hook that had shallow equal protection built in, but it would always try and like, you know, it would never remember that despite it being in all of the skills and in all of the documentation and everything. And it was like that is very much, I mean, I would just even say that is very much like best and standard practice for every single other hook out there, but this very particular one that we were always really trying to focus on, it was always just like, I'm gonna do what I think is best, even though it was over-optimizing in that case. So the best practice for us was not the best practice for the internet, and therefore it was trying too hard.
Okay. Do we have any more questions? I mean, we will be open to networking. You can go ask Jenna everything after that too. No?
We're good.
Okay, thank you, Jenna. Before we